What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Neighborhood Podcast. I'm half of the podcast, Kevin Valentin.
And on the other half of the podcast, my name is Kyle Dabro, and we have a special guest on today's episode. Kevin, you got to introduce our go-to guy for
All
soccer.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, somebody who's been a loyal fan since day one of the podcast, back when I was doing my own thing. That's my boy, Anthony. Soccer connoisseur, Kansas City Chiefs fan, big Yankee fan. Shout out to my dog. Uh, but Anthony, welcome to the podcast, bro. We really appreciate all the support over the last couple of years. And we just wanted to say welcome, welcome, welcome.
I appreciate you guys having me here. I mean, it's definitely been something that I've been looking forward to. I'm a big fan of the show. I've been a big fan ever since you guys started, and it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to see what we have in store today.
Now, Kevin,
Yes, sir.
we also have a new announcement as well, and that
That
is,
is true.
that our logo has now been finalized, and this is not the whole logo. I wasn't able to get like the picture to fit the window properly, but this is what our logo will look like after this episode. So I want to, take the time to say thank you to Kevin's girlfriend, Isabel, for being able to do that for us. You know, Granted, I know she's been working very hard on that, and I know I could speak for Kevin on this and saying that we definitely appreciate the hard work that she put towards making that logo for us. So thank you, Isabel, for making that.
Shout out to you, Bay. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm out here doing what I got to do. You always encourage me to express myself and do the podcast. And then, when me and Kyle started talking about doing it, you've been nothing but supportive. And you've always wanted to be included. And I know artistic stuff isn't exactly my forte. So for you to be able to contribute to the team and do this for us, we really appreciate you. And, we know it took a little bit, but we're grateful to have it. And we can't wait to upload it and use it on all of our videos, thumbnails, whatever attachments, upload it to Spotify, wherever we have to. But thank you so much. But now that we've gotten past the reveal, Kyle, we've got a little agenda today to talk about with Ant. So if you want to go give a quick rundown as to what we're going to be talking about, that would be great.
Yep. So the first topic that we're to go over is just the ongoing news of Lionel Messi going to PSG. The contract has been signed, it is finalized. Messi will be playing for PSG in this upcoming season. So we're going to really, I know Kevin and I are going to really rely on Anthony's expertise when it comes to soccer on this one, just because he's a much more in tune soccer fan than Kevin and I could ever be. So we'll talk about that first. We'll also talk about the NFL a little bit. We're going to focus on our NFC North predictions. So we've gone through the NFC East already. The next one will be the NFC North. We'll also talk about Deshuan Watson and whether or not that his future in Houston is coming to an end, and it could actually be the end of his NFL career. It may be a stretch too far to say that, but things are not looking pretty good for Deshaun Watson's NFL career at this point. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about the NBA. Kawhi Leonard signed his extension with the Los Angeles Clippers, signed a 4-year deal, upwards of almost $180 million. We'll talk about whether or not that we think that Kawhi can be able to put the Clippers into a championship contending window over those next 4 years. We'll also talk a little bit about Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas had a pro-am game in the Drew League just a couple of days ago where he scored 81 points, and he was visibly emotional. He was visibly emotional after that game took place, saying that he thinks that the NBA has largely given up on him. So, we'll ask the question of whether or not we think that Isaiah Thomas is still a quality NBA player. And then we'll wrap up the episode with Dennis Schroder signing a 1-year, $5.9 million deal to go to the Boston Celtics after he was potentially trying to make upwards of $150 million on a contract extension. So we'll talk a little bit about Dennis Schroder fumbling the bag and whether or not that he could be serviceable for the Boston Celtics in this upcoming NBA season. But that's pretty much the rundown for the episode that we have for you guys. Like I said, we'll start with Messi going to PSG. Anthony, we've already kind of discussed the move and just how seismic of a move it is for Messi to leave Barcelona, ends up going to PSG to join with Neymar and Mbappe. So my question to you is what is your expectation for Messi in this upcoming season with PSG?
I expect them to win the Champions League. For me, that is the threshold for them for this upcoming year. I really don't anything upwards of at least not making the Champions League final. I mean, the Champions League final, let alone win it, would be a total failure. Just because that's what they're bringing in their Messi to do. I mean, I feel like maybe they were just one signing away to get them over the hump. And with Messi coming in and, linking up with Neymar and Mbappe, it's going to make that front three pretty much unstoppable. And for me, as far as the way that PSG goes, PSG has had the right team before as far as putting the pieces together. They've signed good goalies, they've signed good defenders, midfielders, things like that. But Messi, I feel like, may be the final piece to really get them over the hump. So, I mean, for me, anything other than either making the Champions League final or winning it would be a total disaster because they're the prohibited favorites by far. I don't think really there's comes any other team that can go head to head. I mean, you never know really what could happen in the Champions League playoff. As far as the French league, they're just going to run away with that. But again, Champions League, they have to win it in my view.
Well, and it's weird to kind of mention this. It's just, when you bring on such an iconic player like Messi, like no matter where you go, you're going to be an instant contender on whatever team you land with. And to join up with a team that already has two superstars in Neymar and Mbappe, that team was formidable to begin with without Messi. Now that you add Messi into the lineup, I mean, the way that I see it in League One, it's going to be a cakewalk. Essentially, PSG is going to hold a monopoly on League One until Messi ends up leaving or, whatever, something could happen down the road. But that's not really the focus here. The focus is Champions League because that's really where their main challenge is going to come. They're going to have to go up against teams like Manchester City, like Chelsea, like Bayern Munich. Like those are your top teams in Europe as of right now. Hell, you can even say Real Madrid to a certain extent as well. I don't know how Barcelona is going to be able to, I guess, replace the void that Messi left after leaving. But, you can never really count them out either. It's just the way that I see it with Messi going to PSG is that it puts them as a prohibited favorite to win Champions League. And even though that it looks like that right now, we kind of have to see how the chemistry goes. Because when you have three superstars, which can all light it up on the scoreboard in their own respective games, you kind of have to see how the chemistry is going to have to work out over these next couple of weeks. There might be some growing pains in that sense, just try to get a rhythm between those three players. But I think by the time that November rolls around or December going into 2022, I think they'll have worked through those issues and I think they're going to be unstoppable. So the way that I see it, I think once they get that chemistry locked in, I don't see really anybody beating this team. And I think there's a very good chance that when they do, they're going to be literally head and shoulders above most of the competition that they go up against. And even with the teams that I mentioned, like Manchester City, Chelsea, Bayern Munich, and maybe Real Madrid and Barcelona, I think even with those teams, I think PSG holds a sizable advantage over all of those teams, in my respective opinion.
So, I mean, obviously, as the, quote unquote PSG fan, I know I don't watch as much soccer nearly as much as I should or would like to, but I know that PSG overall as a whole had a big focus this offseason, which was to make sure that Mbappe doesn't leave and to make sure that Neymar is happy because the rumors have been circulating every single summer for the last 3 years that Neymar would like a return back to Barcelona. Anthony, you're a Barcelona lifer. You have literally
Yes.
been a fan of that club for God knows how long. And to see literally the super team that they had together just a few years back, to know that every single one of those players are gone. Real Madrid is no longer the same. So you kind of look at that empty squad and you wonder, well, how can you fix that? And then obviously I'm looking at the club in PSG, and I think that this Messi signing solidifies the other two superstars on that club to stay. Mbappe was looking to get a massive payday next season when his contract was up. Messi's there, so it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this by myself, because let's be realistic, Neymar hasn't really played the last year and a half because of injuries, legal issues. I mean, whatever have you. I mean, for God's sakes, the man is a walking diva with a lot of issues on field and off. So I feel like Mbappe may have been frustrated. And again, these are just all my personal assumptions from what I've seen and from what I've read. But I think Messi is the piece, like you said, to hold them together. But he's going to be that glue to hold them for the foreseeable future. I know it's only a 2-year deal, but depending on the success this club can have within the Champions League and obviously dominating the French league, Messi could very well sign another extension when these 2 years are up, as well as Mbappe the next season and whatever they end up doing with Neymar. So, I mean, my question to you, as someone who knows the more in-depth perspective of how these soccer contracts work, what do you think the future holds for PSG after this season, if it pans out, whether that's a Champions League final appearance or Champions League victory?
I think it ultimately pans out on what Messi wants to do, because I think if he opts out after the second year, I could see where it's a domino effect that Mbappe decides to go somewhere or Neymar decides to go somewhere, especially with Mbappe, because I think he's more of the persona where he wants to carry his own team. And that's why you hear all these rumors around where, he wants to go to Liverpool, he wants to go to Real Madrid. You hear all this stuff in the media about him wanting to go elsewhere. But I think with PSG signing Messi, it came as a reassurance, like, okay, we got arguably the best player in the world, arguably ever. Let's try to see if we can go ahead and win this Champions League. Let's see what we can do while we have him here in the short term. And then after that, I can go ahead and decide my future from there. Because honestly, I don't think Messi extends after his second year. I really think after that second year is up, he's going to want to move either back to Barcelona, because from reports, it was heartbreaking from him to leave. Not just from the club's perspective, but his family. His children grew up in Barcelona. His wife and everything. They have a foundation there. So him leaving that, it wasn't just only leaving the team, but it was leaving his lifestyle, everything that he had there. So I think, with this PSG contract that he has, I think it's more of just like a 2-year thing, a 2-year transition, see how it goes. And then afterwards, whether he decides to go back to Barcelona or if he decides to go back, play in the United States, that could be a realistic possibility. But for PSG, I think, really these next 2 years, it's going to be mostly about putting all their eggs in the Champions League basket. And, they'll use the League One as like a test, just so that to see how it builds their chemistry. Because I think, they're going to run with it. That league is not even going to be it's not even going to be close. That they'll just pretty much use it as a test on how they can just build chemistry, how they can play together and things like that. So, for me, it's going to be interesting to see these next 2 years to see how it plays out. But I think after the 2 years, you're going to start to see a domino effect, especially if Messi leaves. I think Mbappe may look to take his talents elsewhere, and maybe Neymar too, but who knows?
So you don't think at all, if they solidify a Champions League victory this year and they take it deep into the next season, that Messi doesn't continue, or consider, should I say, staying? Because as you know, Messi's already done this triple-headed monster once before. Ironically enough, he did it with Neymar by his side at Barca with Luis Suarez. You don't think that based off of the dominance he had in La Liga with the three of them healthy and together, he could not repeat that success but at a higher level in the Champions League? You don't think he would want to stay? Wouldn't that entice him?
If the opportunity presents itself where they can maybe run it back to back, I could see that happening. But it's just from the emotional standpoint. I think it's just he left so much at Barcelona that I don't see him staying in Paris for such a long time and just starting completely over. Like, I mean, you're in a completely different country with a different language, a different lifestyle. I felt like he just invested so much in Barcelona that I just see this 2-year run as more of like okay, let me just try something out. I had to leave obviously because of contractual reasons. Barcelona pretty much shit the bed. And I think he just uses this as like, okay, let me just see if I can win more Champions League, maybe more Ballon d'Ors. Just keep adding to my legacy and my resume, and then afterwards, if I want to go elsewhere, if I want to go back to Barcelona, I think that's what he decides. It's what he ends up doing.
So you're almost saying it is like PSG is maximizing their window in the next 2 years to make everything happen until that there's a real possibility that not only Messi's leaving, there's a good chance that Mbappe and Neymar may not even be on the roster come 2023. That's the point that I'm kind of reading from you on that.
Yeah, and I mean maybe Neymar stays because I mean for me Neymar recently has been more about the money and
Sadly.
media perspective that comes out of it. I mean he's still a phenomenal player, but I think if Messi leaves, Mbappe might decide to again takes his talents elsewhere because maybe he just wants to try new things. And it's gonna be really interesting to see what they do. I mean, like I said, they're prohibited favorites to win it. If they don't win the Champions League, I think it's a failure because that's what they're measured by. Not only because of the players that they have, but because of all the money that they spend. I mean, I feel like with these owners, Middle Eastern owners, all they do is just buy players left and right, regardless of contractual or salary cap situation. So, I'm excited to see what's going to happen, but again, it's all on them. The spotlight is going to be on them. I feel like ultimately it's going to be them versus themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because they have the talent to be everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
what's crazy is, like the three of them are used to individual spotlight because Neymar and Mbappe have had national media coverage, if not worldwide media coverage at young ages. I mean, for God's sakes, Mbappe won the World Cup. Or was it the Olympics? I can't remember. Was it France?
World Cup at 18.
He won the World Cup at 18. Neymar's been a sensation in the country of Brazil for
since he was a teenager.
over a decade. And I mean, when the World Cup went through Brazil and they failed to reach it, I mean, you can see the emotional content and output just from him. And for God's sakes, Messi's been Barcelona's GOAT for over 15 years. So you really look at all of them and individually, yeah, the spotlight's been great. And Messi has shared the spotlight for the most part in the latter half of his tenure at Barca. So it's I really agree with what you said. It's like, can the three of them overcome their egos? And I would say out of the three of them, the highest ego would probably be Mbappe and Neymar because, as I've already previously said and mentioned, Neymar is the diva of the three. Mbappe is the youngest of the three, and he's the up-and-coming guy to say, I don't really want to share the ball. Like, I want to do this by myself. He's literally at that part where he said, you know what, I've already won the World Cup. I've already taken this team as far as I can take it. Let me go somewhere else where I can literally say I've carried an entire team by myself because since Mbappe's tenure at PSG, Neymar's been right by his side.
So Neymar left Barcelona to go to PSG.
So
he wanted to do his own thing. So
yeah, so that's where I'm going to be curious to see what happens with the club post this season because they got two, not selfish, but two more single-minded or single-track-minded individual players versus Messi's always been about winning. So I'm hoping that maybe the veteran presence of Messi in that locker room can kind of bring them together and show, listen, they literally cannot guard all of us. I think this is where they start blowing teams out. And I think when they get over those growing pains, like Kyle said, Neymar and Messi have playing history together. They know how to work very well together. I mean, Neymar, like, for God's sakes, has been advertising, I want to go back to Barca for 3 straight summers. And it just hasn't happened. So the two of them are going to be fine. It's how in the fuck are we going to get this kid, Mbappe, to fit into our already coexisting and well-meshed teamwork? And I got, the rest of the team, of course. So, like Ant said, definitely curious, definitely excited to see what happens. Without a Champions League title, it is 130% a failure, period.
Now, Anthony, I got to ask you this. What is the appeal for a possible return to Barca, not only for Messi, but for Neymar as well?
It's going to be really hard, especially with Messi because he demands such high wages. And even if he takes a pay cut, it all depends on how Barcelona's financial situation is, because that's the main reason why they couldn't sign him this year. They had a contract already agreed, but because of the league's salary cap situations and financial regulations, they weren't able to sign him. So it all just going to depend on Barcelona's financial situation. Would I love to have them both back? Of course. But I mean, if you're looking at Messi come back as a player, I mean, he's 34 now. We're talking 36, 37. It all just depends. I mean, Ronaldo right now looks like he's going to be playing in those 40s, but Ronaldo reminds me of LeBron James. He takes care he puts so much into his body and how he trains and things like that. Where Messi is just he's not a physical specimen. It's all about his skills and agility. So I'd love to have them back, but honestly, I don't think any of the two come back to play for Barcelona again. I think this was just the last straw, and I just don't think that Barcelona will have the financial stability or flexibility to sign any of them because of the high wages that they demand.
I mean, for God's sakes, Messi's making 35 to 41 US dollars in France right now for the next 2 years. So God knows what's going to happen with him and Neymar.
41 million, right?
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. I don't know what I just said.
You said 35 to 41. I was like,
oh, you know what I mean. Dollars an hour. So you look at it and you're just like, can a team afford those two players? Like, those two players alone take up like half of a roster, like in terms of finances. So it's like, I agree with Ant. I don't know how that's going to be possible. One maybe, but not both.
And the way that PSG does it is because, I mean, there have been rumors saying that like the owners of PSG are like the ones that are controlling FIFA, so they could just get away with signing players and paying them such high wages, which I think it's bullshit. But I mean, it's gonna be a fun experiment. I see them as like the Brooklyn Nets signing James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Like that's like at first you thought about it and you're like, how are these three superstars are going to play with one another, especially with them being so ball dependent, except maybe Durant. But it's obviously they clicked, so it's going to be fun to see. Really hope they can win it just for Messi's sake and for Neymar's sake. But yeah, I don't see them going back to Barcelona again.
That's well said. It's well said. But I guess we're going to transition into the NFL portion of the episode. Like I mentioned at the top, we're going to go over our NFC North predictions just to kind of give you guys a quick rundown of what we saw in the NFC North last season. The Packers won the division after posting a 13-3 record. After that, you had the Chicago Bears. They finished at 500 with an 8-8 record. I believe they made the playoffs, and they ended up losing to the New Orleans Saints in the wild card matchup last season. And then followed by them, you had the Minnesota Vikings. They finished the season under 500 at 7-9. And then you had the Lions round out the division at 5-11. They were last in the division. So, Anthony, I'll start with you since you are the guest of the episode. Who do you think is going to win the NFC North and why?
The Packers, just because of Aaron Rodgers, and I just feel like the other teams are not going to be as competitive as the Packers. I mean, you have Andy Dalton, which to me is just an absolute liability. I don't know how he has a starting job in the NFL. I think that definitely Justin Fields, maybe by week 1, depending how training camp goes, maybe week 4, if things don't go up to par, will probably be the starter. But I mean, you're still putting in a rookie as your starting quarterback, so that's going to be fascinating to see. The Vikings, I mean, they're just so inconsistent. Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's the epitome of inconsistent. You have one year he has a good year, the next year he's an absolute no-show. And Detroit with Jared Goff, I mean, I just don't think Detroit has the talent enough to be competitive with Green Bay and the other teams. So I can see Green Bay with a repeat of last year. Maybe not so the record. I think, now with the 17-game season, I can see them going 11-6, 12-5, but I think they got a pretty good handle on that division. I don't see any other team coming in close.
Kevin, you're up.
The Yankees just lost to the White Sox. Tim Anderson just hit a walk-off. Like we took the lead. We took the lead. We had back-to-back home runs with Judge and Stanton, and then we literally lose it in the ninth. I don't know, like, bro, Britton, there's no reason for you to be closing this game. Who pitches to Tim Anderson, man? God damn it. Yo, fuck. Sorry.
It's one game. It's one game.
Yeah, but it's games like this that piss me off. It's like, bro, we came back from down 5 runs. Fuck.
You hate to see it. You hate to see it.
Shut up, Kyle. Anyway, in the NFC North, it's and I get the notification pain. Yeah, the NFC North is definitely going to Green Bay. I agree with Ant completely in terms of record. I don't see them doing another not historic but dominant run like 13-3. I definitely see it more of a 12-5 year for sure. Aaron Rodgers being on any team makes him an automatic favorite, obviously. Devontae Adams, best receiver in football immediately, obviously. You know, you re-sign, what's his name? Aaron Jones. He got his contract extension. Obviously, that offense is relatively the exact same. So you bring back the whole team. Defensively, I mean, they have one of the better corners in football in Alexander. I forget his first name for whatever reason. Jair Alexander. There it goes. Yeah, that guy. And I just think playmakers like that, the pass rush that they found a way to bring into the season, which is a big lackluster position for them, or at least dominating stat for them the previous years. I think Aaron's got one more year in him. Obviously, he wants to end it with a bang because everybody knows his next year he's going to be a free agent. He gets to pretty much choose wherever he wants to go. So I don't know second place. Obviously, it's probably going to be a pretty toss-up between, I want to say Chicago and Minnesota because I think Justin Fields ends up taking that job. I've heard a lot of good things about him in camp. Heard a lot of good things about him in the locker room in terms of reports and analysts talking about how his reputation is preceding him, and he seems well beyond his years. So the fact that Nick Foles, if I'm being completely honest with you, I have to say this. The fact that he is a third-string quarterback behind a rookie when he has a championship ring, it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't care when you drafted Justin Fields. Nick Foles has experience that Justin Fields may never have. And to automatically just put someone of his caliber, granted, he did not play stellar last year, but to just disrespect him and place him at third automatically in the depth chart, I think Matt Nagy's going to regret that. Signing Andy Dalton was your first mistake, so let's just go with that. So that's why I think that it's going to be a toss-up because obviously you have one of the best backs in football, arguably the best back in football in Minnesota with Dalvin Cook, and you have a 1-2 punch with the wide receiver tandem of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. I mean, those two are just absolutely ridiculous between route running capabilities, their catch radius. Justin Jefferson's probably got one up on the speed, obviously, not only because of his age, but he is a lot faster just naturally. And I think that offense has the potential to put up, 24 to 30 points a game if they really were to stay consistent, if the offensive line could protect. But it's the defense. That's the biggest question mark for Minnesota. A lot of times Kirk Cousins, when he did play well, the defense let up, and that's definitely not Kirk's fault. But then there were games, like Ant said, where Kirk would throw 3-4 interceptions in 3 quarters, and you're like, yo, what are you doing? And they played catch-up for the rest of it. So, which obviously takes out the ability for Dalvin Cook to be successful when you're down 2 scores. I think Detroit finishes the season at the bottom. Like Ant said also, they have no weapons. I mean, it's literally Jared Goff on an island by himself in terms of offensively. So I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit finds their way back into a top 5 lottery pick, 3-14, maybe 4-12, 4-13. Math isn't my friend. And yeah, the NFC North for the most part is pretty simple with Green Bay winning, but I want to say 2-3 is going to be a little bit more of a flip depending on how Chicago and Minnesota turn out. But you can for sure pin Green Bay 1, Detroit 4, and whatever the hell happens in the middle, it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys 100%. I think Green Bay wins this division pretty much by a cakewalk here. Simply just because despite all the drama that's been going on in Green Bay the last couple months or so, I don't think it's going to really matter in the end, simply just because I don't expect a lot of competition from anyone else in the division. So I think the Packers are going to probably win. I'm going to say they're going to go 12-5. I don't know if they're going to have the season. I don't know if they're going to have the season like they did last year, finishing 13-3 at the top of the NFC. but I still think by and large they're going to be a top 2, top 3 team in the NFC this year. And then after that, it's really kind of a toss-up, like Kevin mentioned. I'm going to have the Vikings in second place simply because despite the fact offensively that they have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen, the fact of the matter is that Kirk Cousins is just too unpredictable for me. But I do think that he will slightly improve from last season. Right, that's not saying much, but it's Kirk Cousins. You never really know what you're going to get with him. But I got to expect something different from the defense. The defense gave up the second most points in the entire conference last year. They gave up 475 points. So if they're gonna be somewhat competitive in the NFC this year or in the NFC North as well, their defensive effort is gonna have to improve tremendously if they want to break 500 this year. I got the Bears in third place. There's just too much for me when it comes to the quarterback issue there. You've got 3 guys that are essentially vying for that quarterback spot. And to be quite honest with you, not any of them really thrill me. I think Justin Fields is obviously kind of the one we don't really know about yet, simply because he's coming into his first year as a potential quarterback for the Chicago Bears this year. But I guess time will tell in that sense. And I don't have a lot of faith in what Chicago's offense is going to be able to put out this year. So I have them third, and then the Lions. Essentially, that's where NFL careers go to die at this point. They were 5-11 last year. And Matt Stafford, by and large, was carrying that franchise for over a decade. So he finally gets to see some new horizons out in LA. I know we'll talk about the NFC West within the next couple of days or so. But yeah, by and large, I don't expect much from the Lions. I think they probably finish around 3-14, 4-13, somewhere around there. It's where pretty much careers go to die at this point. That's pretty much my expectation with the Lions. So just to kind of reiterate where I stand, Packers will win the division pretty handily. Chicago may be second, but I'm going to go with Minnesota. I think Minnesota finishes second. Chicago finishes third. And then I got Detroit rounding out the division in fourth place. So
no, I mean, and when you have 3 people that know football the way that we do, and it's pretty common knowledge that the three teams in question outside of the division leader, it kind of sucks, honestly. I mean, it's not as bad as the NFC East because we all know that all 4 of those teams are pretty fucking bad. But when you sit here and you try to like pick and choose who you think is going to fall within that bottom tier of that division, they're good players on every single team outside of Detroit. I mean, Detroit, who's the best player on that team, if you're being honest with you? Jeff Okudah, like Jared Goff, maybe by default.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but between Chicago and Minnesota, you have a bunch of Pro Bowlers. You have David Montgomery, Allen Robinson on the Chicago side. Obviously, you have Khalil Mack and a number of other people on the defense. So it's like when you sit here and the main question mark for each team in reference to Minnesota and Chicago are the opposite for each. Obviously, Chicago's is the offense. And then for Minnesota, theirs is the defense that are question mark. You kind of feel for it, man. You want to see these individual players succeed, but when their overall team around them is just piss poor because of the front office, you're just like, well, that sucks. You like to see tight division races. You like to see those things that go all the way down to the wire, like the NFC West, in which we're going to get to either next week. But no, it's definitely going to be next week. But, or obviously, we have the what division am I thinking of? Oh my God, we literally just talked about it the other day. Oh, the AFC North. When you have 3 teams competing for a division lead, you just hate to see such a big gap in between teams in the division. Well, at least I do. I find that to be pretty boring.
Yeah, it's
And
just.
can we make a petition to take Detroit from the Thanksgiving games, please? Because I'm tired of seeing them on Thanksgiving every single freaking year. I don't know when was the last time that Detroit won a game on Thanksgiving, but every team that's come recently has like kicked their ass, and it hasn't even been close. And to be honest, I think Detroit's best player is probably their kicker, Matt Prater, because I think he's the most consistent, one of the most consistent kickers you have. Other than that, I don't really think of anybody else. So, I mean, if we could just start something to get Detroit away from national TV on Thanksgiving, because I'd rather see another team other than Detroit. We already have to deal with the Cowboys. I'm sorry, my fiance's a huge Cowboys fan. I'm not, but I'm just
Sorry,
tired of
Caleb.
seeing. I'm tired of seeing the Lions on Thanksgiving every single year.
It's Detroit, though. It's Detroit. It's just I don't really expect a lot from them. I really never have. Even with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson, I mean, I think they only made the playoffs one time, and they got bounced out. I think they played from
Cowboys. They lost to the Cowboys.
actually they might have made it. Kev, did they only make it once or twice?
With Calvin on the team, I think once.
Because I thought they played against the New Orleans Saints in a matchup in the playoffs.
It is irrelevant. They lost. Who
but
cares?
It's just the only analogy or the only saying that I could come up with Detroit is like that's where just careers go to die at this point. It's just it is kind of like the NFL's graveyard at this point. It just
Ask Barry Sanders and ask Megatron.
Yeah.
Pain.
And Calvin was able to still get a gold jacket out of it. So I mean, good on him. It's just
I mean, let's not even talk about that.
Kevin's always got Kevin, do you want to expand on that?
No. No point. Just gonna seem biased. It's not biased at all. It's factual, but it's relevant. Honestly, I'm trying to find this Deshuan Watson thing that I just got this morning from my friend. I don't know what source he got it from, but it was like a big paragraph about our next segment, which is obviously what we're going to bring up in a few seconds with Deshaun Watson. But it's like the Texans said something about not paying him as much because of ABC, and he's not going to be playing in the preseason game, and they don't see him playing until a lot of this gets situated, and just a bunch of different shit. But of course, I don't know where he got it from, so I can't find it.
Well, I mean, we'll dive into that topic anyway. So there's been a lot of reports coming out saying that essentially Deshaun Watson's future with Houston is really up in the air in this point. It's like Kevin just mentioned. We don't know whether or not we're going to see him in preseason games. There's still a lot of ongoing legal issues that he's currently sorting out through off the field. And guys, just with everything kind of coalescing together at this moment, is it safe to say that we have seen the last of Deshaun Watson playing for the Houston Texans, or is there still a chance that we do get to see him at some point this season?
I think it's the last time that we saw him. One, because he wants out, and two, because I think the bridges are burned. He was such in a disarray with the relationship of how things were handled, starting from the GM that they signed, because he felt like he had no input as far as who they were going to sign, and as far as when they signed the head coach, even though the coach was someone that Deshaun previously was, new, he had no input. So I felt like he felt like the Texans just did wrong by him as far as not being able to him have an input on what the franchise can do. And with the whole situation going on as far as his legal issues, I mean, I think ultimately it does stain his reputation, but I do think NFL's the league, it's like the league of second chances. Whatever it is that you've done in the past, I feel like some team ultimately will end up giving you a second chance.
Except for Ray Rice.
Except for Ray Rice, that's correct. So I do think that he ends up playing elsewhere. If I was Miami, I don't think Tua is the answer. So I would get Tua. You have a shitload of first round picks. Go ahead and trade them for Deshaun. I think Miami would be an instant contender in the AFC if they made it. If they made that trade. But I just don't see him staying in a place where, one, he doesn't want to be there. Two, the relationship's not good, even though they're paying him a shitload of money. So I could definitely see him sit out this entire year, and then probably by next year they'll end up trading him.
Kevin, go ahead.
So, I mean, with what I read this morning, he's not playing in the preseason. He's not getting the full salaried amount, and he's not being put on the exempt list, which means even if the NFL were to conduct their own individual investigation and came back before the regular season were to start, he's not going to get that lump sum of an amount because a lot of his legal issues are currently pending with the civil suits and the actual legal lawsuits. So, I mean, like, there's just so much stuff going on right now in Deshaun Watson's camp. Deshaun Watson individually as a player. I mean, I'm reading an article here. He snapped at the media today for the first time saying, why you guys always recording me and asking me the same exact questions every single day like I can answer it. I mean, I don't blame him. Everybody has a boiling point. But, I mean, you're in the media for 22 individual civil suits. Do you expect them not to ask you like, come on, man? You're not only a star quarterback in this league, you now have a legal four-headed stamp that says "I fucked up" on your face every single day. Of course, they're gonna ask. It's literally their job. They get paid to ask questions, no matter how repetitive or annoying. Like, get over it. You did it to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the spotlight you've put yourself into. This is the situation that you're in, and you got to deal with it. Now, I don't think that he leaves Houston because Houston had a lot of opportunities to trade him this offseason with the multitude of offers that they had received from so many different teams. And if they were going to trade him, they would have done it earlier. And they've come out and said, as early as I believe earlier this week, they said that they have no plans on releasing him. So he's probably just going to be stuck on that roster, getting small incremental payments, or if this turns south, they might cut him. But, I mean, they don't plan on trading him from what I'm reading and understanding. The only team I know that has actually still been in contact with Houston has been Philadelphia, and trade talks were heating up supposedly last week. So, I mean, I don't necessarily know what happened, where that went, or where they fell apart. But as I said it to Kyle, and we talked about, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before that, I don't necessarily know if that's a good idea for Philadelphia to get rid of their current picks and their future, as well as their current quarterback that is Jalen Hurts, to go and trade for somebody that probably isn't going to play this year. So it's like a wasted trade. You know, you give up everything for someone that might not touch the field again. So if you would have asked me 3-4 months ago, I would have said, yeah, do it while you can. But now seeing how bad this is starting to stir up, not only in Houston, but as an overall NFL perspective, Kyle might be right. We might not see this man on the field ever again unless these cases either come to an agreement in terms of a settlement or they go away. Because if the NFL can't even conduct an investigation of their own, who's to say this doesn't go on for a few years? I'm no lawyer, I'm no judge, so I can't say that I know, but it's just like I said earlier, it's super sad to see one of my more favorite players that's definitely not English, but you know, somebody that I enjoyed watching on Sundays, even if he was in my division to play against. The man just lit the field up every time he touched it. I mean, I picked him every single year for fantasy for the last like 3 seasons in a row, and in one of those years I won my championship. So it's like I grew to want to watch him because of fantasy, and like watching him play in college made me love him more. So you hate to see it, but I mean, in situations like this, what are you gonna do?
It's kind of weird for me because there's just so much in limbo right now. And, granted, he's on the practice field, he's practicing with the Texans, but it's under this assumption that we're probably not going to see him play, in any sort of regular season capacity for Houston. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's just in a situation where things could go very south very quick. And I'm not talking about the civil lawsuits that he's already involved in. The reason why I think a lot of teams are just in no way, shape, or form even really considering a trade for him at this point is because of there's a very good chance that he's going to get criminal proceedings in court within the next couple months. The main focus has always been these civil suits that have been brought up against him. When the focus starts changing to a criminal element instead of a civil element, teams are going to say, no way are we going to make any sort of investment in Deshaun Watson long term. So that's where it essentially ends any sort of trade discussion. I actually have a Pro Football Talk article pulled up here, and it mentioned that the Eagles and the Houston Texans may have been involved in some sort of speculation of some sort of trade going on. That is not the case, and it really is due to the fact that a lot of teams and a lot of NFL GMs are expecting this to even get worse for Deshaun Watson if these proceedings end up going to criminal charges, not just civil ones. So when I look at Deshaun Watson this year, I think by and large, I think he's not going to hit the field this year just because I think he's going to be looked at as like a pariah. Not only, obviously off the field he is, but on the field, I think he's going to get absolutely roasted if he ends up playing a snap this year. But you throw in those criminal elements as far as, him possibly getting pretty significant criminal charges in a court setting, there's a very good chance, depending on how that goes in court, that we may never see Deshaun Watson play in the NFL again. So, yeah, he's in some really deep shit here. And unless they're able to kind of work out some sort of settlement, I just don't see it. So, we're going to have to kind of play this one by ear, just because there still are a lot of moving pieces to this story. But if I had to put money on it for this year, I don't think that Deshaun Watson plays. Who knows? Could be wrong about that. But I think it's going to reach a point in time where if these criminal proceedings happen and he ends up getting, found convicted of those, it's over. But we haven't reached that point. So it's like I said, we kind of have to kind of keep this one on the back burner and just let these court proceedings take place.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go
Well,
ahead.
I was just gonna say it all plays to Houston's benefit, because I don't think Houston wants to let him go just because they know what they have in him, and they know that they have the leverage of, if Sid goes down south, other teams won't be able to. I don't think other teams will want to make that sacrifice of getting all those picks just to trade for someone who might have some issues with these criminal lawsuits. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. I don't think he plays this year at all. But maybe if by the following year, if we haven't heard anything about these lawsuits, I think of it similar to the Antonio Brown situation. He ended up signing with Tampa while he was having some issues off the field, and he was able to play with the Bucks. And I haven't heard anything as far as lawsuits since. So, I mean, if we don't hear anything by next year, it may be the same kind of scenario. But I definitely agree with you guys. I don't think he plays this year at all.
Yeah, it's just poor decision making. The guy was one of the best up and coming quarterbacks that we've seen in recent memory, and now it's basically just falling apart. I don't want to say that it's over, like, for him. I'm just saying that it is growing more likely that it could be over. So who knows? Anthony, it's like you said, you could look at the NFL to a certain extent as like the league of second chances. Would there be a point in time where Deshaun Watson, can come back from this and, play on the field? I'm never going to rule that out. So I don't want to say like it's just, it's signed and done, like he's never going to play in the NFL again. It's just that, if it really goes south for him as far as these criminal proceedings go, that's where I could see it potentially, coming to an end. But as of right now, it's mostly been civil in court. So you kind of have to let these events kind of, play out first. And if they go criminal, then it really kind of puts, Deshaun in a bad spot, because at that point you could really start saying, yeah, there's a very good chance he never plays again. So with that said, we'll transition into the NBA portion of the podcast. We'll start with Kawhi Leonard re-signing with the Los Angeles Clippers. Signed a 4-year deal with the Clippers, almost upwards of $180 million. You combine the fact that he will be alongside Paul George and Reggie Jackson going into next season. Now, Kawhi is recovering from an ACL injury that he suffered in the playoffs. So we don't really know his timetable to come back from that injury yet. I imagine he will come back this season, but the time for that has not been determined yet. So, Anthony, let me start with you. With Kawhi signing this extension with the Clippers, do you think that Kawhi at some point can put the Clippers into a championship contending window?
At some point, yes, but I don't think that window is going to be very. I think it's going to be a very short window, because the West is just getting stronger by the minute. I mean, you look at these teams that either missed the playoffs this year, or the Warriors were in the playoffs but didn't win a series for basically, if it was just came down to a 1-game scenario or anything like that. So yes, I do think that they can definitely win a championship. They definitely have to get the right pieces around it. I think they have to get like the situations around them have to be all like in timeline with one another to go into a championship. But it's just going to be hard. I mean, you're looking at Golden State is going to come back and they're going to be good next year. I mean, hopefully Clay comes back and everything goes well. We don't know if Kawhi is going to play next year as well because of his ACL. And I mean, the guy is he has a straight face every single time. So you don't know what he's going to say or what he's going to do. So I could see it where he comes back maybe at halfway next year and who knows what will happen. Maybe he decides to, say screw it and I'm not going to come back for next year and I'll come back to the following year. So there's a good possibility, but it's just going to be tough, man. I mean, by the time, everything comes to fruition, the West is just going to be tough. I mean, the Mavericks are going to get better. I know Kevin's going to be excited for that, but these teams are just going to go away. I was really shocked this year to find out how well Phoenix did throughout the entire season. Ultimately making it to the finals, but as these teams are getting better and Kawhi's getting older and they're gonna have that window, but it's gonna be tough. I just if they make it, I don't know that they'll win it, but they'll definitely have a chance to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I agree that they have the window. I disagree with it being a small window because I believe last season showed a lot for the Clippers. Paul George had a pretty good postseason run, obviously excluding some of those late game free throw misses. He kind of showed that he could shoulder the load. I know that a lot of times that Pandemic P nickname kind of comes out a lot of times around the postseason or in clutch moments, but Paul George showed this season that that name is either not as common or no longer exists because he legitimately came out and said, I can carry this team. And they were legit a game away from going to an NBA Finals. And that's kind of crazy when you wait, was it 2 games? Did they lose in 6 or 7?
It was 6.
It was 6. So they were 2 games away from an NBA Finals appearance, and that was without their best player in Kawhi Leonard. Now, to a certain extent, I know Kyle and I have talked about this off the air. Kawhi, everyone knows what you're going to get from him. 25 plus, good defensive effort, 7 rebounds, maybe 10, depending on how that goes, and of course, like 4 to 6 assists, maybe on a good night, right? And of course, a couple of steals and maybe a block. Paul George is the question mark here in the locker room with, all right, are you going to get Paul George of Indiana? Are you going to get Paul George of his first year in LA when he couldn't hit the front side of the ocean in the postseason? But the Clippers team, as it is constructed right now, Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Kawhi Leonard, and the rest of that team with Tyronn Lue as the coach, I would say that the window is a little bit more open than we're leading them to believe. Again, next season might be a little bit more of a question mark with Kawhi being out for either the majority of the year or the year itself. I mean, hey, Kyle and I thought that Giannis was going to be out for the entire finals, if not a good portion, and we were dead fucking wrong. So shit, who the hell knows what kind of rehab this man's going to do? But if Kawhi plays a good amount of the season this year, who's to say that the Clippers can't make a late season run? Obviously, he's going to have to get back into the groove. The team is going to have to get used to him being in the rotation and taking shots away from players that had to step up while he was away. But I don't think the Clippers are that far off from a championship. I mean, if you really think about it, if Kawhi was on that team, I think Kawhi goes to the finals. And if Kawhi plays in the finals this year, I think that, no disrespect to Giannis, I just think they would have had a lot more offensive consistency from the two of those players than Devin Booker and Chris Paul. And I know Devin dropped 40 twice, but there were a few games where Devin had very, very, very bad performances and inconsistencies shooting the basketball. So I think Kawhi's defense, Paul George's defense, that would have made a lot more of a stand than an undersized guard in Chris Paul and a non-defensive efficient Devin Booker. So I would say that window is a lot more open than we're anticipating.
I'm going to break it down to you like this. So the way that I see it is, I agree with you guys that I think the championship window is open for them. I just don't think they're going to be able to get a title. Just because the Clippers will be competitive in the Western Conference. I just don't think they have enough to get past all the way to the finals and potentially win a finals. And the reason why I look at it is this. So when I look at the Western Conference, going into next season, the Lakers are looking to bounce back after getting bounced out of the first round of the playoffs last year. You've got Golden State, who is bringing back Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and the Splash Brothers are going to be back once again. And I imagine they're going to have something to say about making their presence known in the Western Conference once again. You've got Denver, where you have Nikola Jokic, who's the reigning MVP. I imagine he's going to have another sensational year. You also have Jamal Murray coming back, and that duo between those two is always fun to watch. You've got Phoenix, who's a team on the rise. Granted, they didn't win the finals, but they got all the way to the finals this year. And then you could look at maybe like Dallas as a team on the rise as well, with Luka re-signing that max contract just a few days ago. I mean, that's a lot of teams to contend with.
Did you mention the Lakers?
I did it at the beginning.
Okay, I'm double checking. I was sitting here like, this man skipped his own team.
No. I always got to mention them first. So when you look at the Western Conference, I mean, you're talking about 5-6 teams that are going to be right in it for the top of the Western Conference. So I think the Clippers are going to find themselves kind of like in the middle of the pack. I think they're going to be probably like a 3 seed, maybe a 4, kind of depending on, whether or not Phoenix can replicate the success that they had last year going into this next. And then maybe seeing a team like Denver kind of continuing their success from last year, even though they got destroyed by Phoenix in the second round. I just think that the Western Conference, by and large, is just too log jammed at the top. And I think the only way that the Clippers are going to win a title is a lot of these teams that I just mentioned are going to have to deal with some sort of injury issue that's going to allow the Clippers to beat a worn down team or an injury riddled team at the top to get past them, to get into a situation where they could win a finals. And that would mean that Kawhi would have to stay healthy, Paul George would have to stay healthy, Reggie Jackson would have to stay healthy. By and large, the team would have to stay healthy enough to get past those top teams who may deal with some injuries to find themselves to getting into some sort of finals matchup. I don't really foresee that being the case. I can't really rely on Kawhi's health long term. Those knees have always been an issue, and now the fact that he's coming off of an ACL injury, I think it's going to hinder him to it. I think it'll hinder him to a certain extent. I don't know what I don't know what degree it will, but there's going to be some adjustment with him coming off of that injury. So I think for this season, I don't think it's in the cards for the Clippers this year. And I think it's only going to get tougher as it goes on, simply just because there are some very young teams like Phoenix and Denver to watch out over the next couple of years. And I didn't even mention Utah. I don't know if Utah's going to ever get to a finals either, but you can't rule them out either. So I just don't see it with the Clippers. I really don't. I think they're going to be there. I think they'll be in the mix. But do I think that they'll win one after Kawhi signs this, 4-year deal? No, I just don't see it.
I think everything just has to fall into place for them too. Because you got to have Paul George just has to be consistent throughout an entire playoff series in order for them to really have a chance of winning a title. Because if he's going to have these ups and downs where he shows up one game and then next game he turns into George Paul, I really don't. I don't think that they can win like that. And overall, I think just like I said, the West is getting tougher by the year. And we didn't even count Portland and with Dame Lillard. You have Memphis with John Morant. I really think that these teams are just going to get better and better and better, where it's just going to be tough for the Clippers to really, really, really do something unless everything falls into place, whether it's injuries from another team or, something else happens. But it's just going to be tough. They have a window, but even the East is getting better too. So it's going to be really hard for them to win a championship.
Kevin, do you have anything else to add?
No, not necessarily. Everybody knows how competitive the Western Conference has been. It's always been the most competitive conference out of the two. But to Ann's point, the East is only getting stronger as we speak. Milwaukee's just going to come back and try to defend that championship. Brooklyn comes back healthy and reloaded. Obviously, Philadelphia, outside of this whole Ben Simmons situation, depending on what they acquire, if they get him off their hands, they may come back better because of Ben's offensive liabilities. Atlanta was a team nobody saw coming. The Knicks was a team nobody saw coming. And, everybody made it a competitive run throughout this entire season. And more teams than others made it competitive in the postseason, obviously. But I think that the league is just a lot stronger than it has been in a very, very, very long time. It seems a little bit more balanced throughout the conferences. You're not seeing a team negative 17 games, or should I say under 517 games, making an 8 seed. So I'm definitely curious to see how the season goes. But there is a player in particular that I know we're about to talk about that I'm very curious to see what happens. And that is Isaiah Thomas. And I know a lot of people are familiar with Isaiah Thomas in his Boston days and, him dropping 50-something points on the eve of his sister's passing in the playoffs against the Wizards. And, the whole situation where he gets traded to Cleveland, and that whole situation kind of screws itself, and he kind of bounces from team to team over the last couple of years. And he dropped 81 points in a Pro-Am game just a few days ago and was seen very and visibly emotional after the game, kind of shouting out blurbs about, people gave up on me, people walked away, nobody thought I could do this, they didn't think I could be here. I mean, Pro-Am game or not, 81 points is a lot of points to score in any professional setting. Granted, it's not the NBA, it's not the Euro League, but I mean, 81 points at 5'8", in your 30s, with a messed up hip. You know what I'm saying? People say you can't hoop anymore. People say you can't play defense. People say you're a diva, a basket case, whatever they want to narrate and slap a narrative on him for. 81 points is 81 points. And I think that the man deserves to be on a roster. And I'm going to stick to that. I mean, there's plenty of scrubs out there that can't even give you 3 points a game, but they're on an NBA roster because of their height, and they could at least guard better than him. I threw a random number at Kyle being a dickhead, but I truly believe it's somewhere in that, upper echelon of nobody in this league plays defense. It is an offensively driven league. I was like, I shit you not. I swear to God, I said 46% of this league plays no defense. So if Isaiah drops 30 and the team holds if the team as a whole holds the opposing team to shooting 45% or less, Isaiah Thomas's defensive liability or his plus minus is going to be irrelevant. He's coming off the bench, and he's just going to be a scorer. Listen, we know they're going to score on you, but we need to make sure you score on your side. Make adjustments, create space for him. We know he can shoot. We know he's a mismatch on the other end. When a big gets put on him, he's capable of putting up 15 points in an NBA setting. We know he can do it at a higher pace, higher clip if given the opportunity. So I'm just going to say, after this Pro-Am game, I think a lot of teams need to really pay attention and say, hey, listen, we need a veteran out here that's going to be able to put some points up or control the second unit, or we just need someone that can create a shot. I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm just thinking of a couple of teams offhand that could be needing someone of his caliber. And I'm automatically thinking Portland. Portland doesn't really have a backup guard. Portland doesn't really have anybody outside of Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum that can create a shot now that Melo's gone. Philadelphia, who runs that second unit? You know what I mean? Milwaukee, who runs that second unit? Brian Flores or whatever his name is, Brian Forbes, Brandon Forbes. I don't know.
Forbes.
I mean, I don't know if I would say I don't know if I would say Milwaukee though. Milwaukee has a pretty solid bench.
But I'm just saying in general, in terms of someone that could come off the bench and immediately give you 15 points. There's very rare amounts of people that can do that are not named Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford. And Isaiah Thomas falls into that category because he can play the minutes of a starter. He shoots very efficient from the field. He shoots damn near 90% from the free throw line. It's not the offensive game that is the question. It's always been the defensive portion of it. Allen Iverson wasn't the greatest defender in the world. Granted, he led the league in steals a couple of years in a row, but he was undersized. No one said shit when AI gave up 30 on one end, but he dropped 45. Nobody said shit. You know what I mean? There's plenty of undersized people. Look Kemba Walker. He's barely 6 feet. When he was in Charlotte and they were losing 50 games, but he was putting up 28 points a game and he went NBA All-Pro, nobody said shit. That's the point I'm trying to make. There are plenty of teams in this league that need somebody to play effective minutes and give them an offensive boost when their main player comes out. I don't see why he's not signed.
Anthony, you can go ahead and take this one.
I mean, It's tough because one, I think he kind of played himself out of the league because of his diva personality. The
Yeah.
reason why he left the reason why the whole spiel didn't work with Cleveland was because he thought he was at LeBron's level. He thought, "Oh, I'm a starter. I can do pretty much what you can do." And LeBron is like, "Okay, yeah, like no, like not going to happen." And I think with his diva personality played a big factor as to why he wasn't able to succeed, whether it's in Cleveland and then I think he went to LA after
Denver.
that.
Yeah, LA,
Denver. He
Denver. Yeah,
went
he
to
went
LA,
everywhere.
and it ended up working out. Does he have the ability to do it? Absolutely. I mean, I think he's definitely a scorer. As Kevin was pointing out, hardly anybody plays defense nowadays. There are teams that that can definitely use him. I think the New York Knicks would be a great option for him. I mean, especially being in Madison Square Garden and all the attention that comes to that. I think that would be a great pick, a great fit for him. I mean, there's other teams that could definitely use him, but I think his personality, the way that he played himself out of the league, it's also the thing that teams think about whether they want to take that risk or not. I mean, don't really think it should come down to that, but I think that's maybe like in their mindset of what they think when trying to sign a player like that. They feel like maybe it may cause too many problems than what it's actually worth. So what I'd love to see him on the team. I mean, hopefully he gets signed because he's a bucket. I mean, 81 points is definitely nothing to joke about. It's just going to be hard though. I mean, I don't know if a team would really want to go ahead and take that initiative of signing someone, and I hope they do for his sake because he can ball.
I'm not going to question his ability to ball. I mean, the guy could score. That's never been his issue, whether he was playing with the Celtics or even like little a split time between like the Lakers and maybe the Wizards the last couple of years. Like, I know the guy could score. The main issue that I've seen from Isaiah Thomas is his inability to stay healthy the last couple seasons. So if you look over the last like 5 years of his career, we'll start with Cleveland. That was in 2017. He played the 15 games, ends up getting traded, goes to the Lakers in that season, ends up playing 17 games. So throughout the entirety of the year in 2017, he only played 32 games. In 2018, he only played 12 games. With Washington in 2019, he played 40. That's the most games that he's played since 2016 when he last played with Boston. And then in 2020, he played 3 games. And in the last couple of years in particular, those injuries have definitely hindered his shooting ability. So he played 3 games with the Pelicans this past season and averaged 7 points. The year before that, he averaged 12. And then the year before that, he averaged 8. He has not averaged 15 points, in a points per game average since 2017. It's been a while since we've seen Isaiah Thomas really be able to score like he did when he was playing with Boston back in 2015 and 2016, where he was not only averaging 20 plus a game. In 2016, he almost averaged 29 points a game. We haven't seen Isaiah Thomas do that in any way, shape, or form in the last couple seasons. Now, granted, scoring 81 points in a pro-am game, that is impressive. But you have to also understand that he's not going up against what I would consider grade A talent.
Of course. You still got to make the shots, though.
But the fact of the matter is, when I look at Isaiah Thomas the last couple of years, he hasn't been able to shoot that effectively from the field. In 2018, with Denver, 34%. With the Wizards, he shot around 40%. This season with the Pelicans, he shot 33%. So, and even going off the years that he had with the Lakers and the Cavs in 2017, he was shooting 36-38%. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that he was lighting it up. He was scoring here and there. But we have not seen anything from Isaiah Thomas that what we saw from the 2015-2016 stretch where he was with Boston. Those days are over. But I think he could still be a serviceable player from the bench. So I don't want to say that his career from the NBA should be over. But I'm going to be honest with you. If you're expecting Isaiah Thomas to score 15 points off the bench, I think you're asking a little bit too much. I think at best, you're going to get maybe 10. If you get 10 from him, I'm not even saying consistently. I'm saying if you get 10 points from him, period, I think that's good. I think it's good enough coming off the bench. I know he's definitely a defensive liability, but I think at this point, I think he's good for maybe 10 points and that's it. I think 15 is asking too much, and the stats kind of reflect that. And it's in large part due to the fact that he can't stay healthy. So, I mean, there's a very good point to be made here that you could maybe say that Isaiah Thomas's NBA career is over simply just because of the fact that he can't stay healthy. But if he's able to stay healthy and he shows that he could, get through an 82 game season while relatively staying healthy, maybe he could average 10 points a game. But I think availability is his main issue here. He just can't stay healthy. And until that happens, I don't know if a return to the NBA is really imminent for him in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm taking all those things into consideration. Would you really want to sign someone who may not be there, play all 82 games, doesn't shoot as well from the field, and maybe hasn't scored as much as he did back in his Boston days? I mean, I think they also got to take that into consideration, because you have these other players that are, enhancing their game, and whether they're coming off the bench or whatever there is that, that want to play these minutes, and a GM may feel that Isaiah Thomas may be taken away from that. So, I mean, it's something to definitely think about, but it's going to be hard to see him in an NBA team. I'll give you that.
And I mean,
there's so many players that you just think of that are on rosters that are like, how is he on a roster outside of like Isaiah Thomas? And I know we've talked about injury, but injury aside, like a name that populates into my mind, like you have Jared Dudley on a roster, like, you know what I'm saying? You have people like
Udonis Haslem.
We were just talking about him earlier, obviously, just for the veteran's sake of just being on a roster. Of course, now I'm going to go blank, and I literally had an exact replica of somebody I was just bringing up in my mind. But the point is, we all know there's players on rosters you look at and you're just like, what? Like, how are you in the league right now? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you on this bench? Like, there are players, like, for God's sakes, Jamal Crawford was a free agent almost this entire year. Jamal Crawford, like the guy that's won Sixth Man of the Year 3 times. Like, the man is 40, still dropping 40-plus points in Pro-Am games, like, with ease. Like, we're talking not just being open, but making people fall. And he did that in Phoenix in Dirk's last year, Luka's rookie year. His closeout game for the season, he scored 52 at 37. Like, you know what I'm saying? There are people in this league that you're like, why are you not on a roster? And all I'm saying is, I think he deserves another shot with a full season, COVID's out the way, a full off-season program, health, rehab, whatever it is that he's got to get done. Give him a shot for the vet minimum. The Lakers reportedly were interested in signing him because obviously the Lakers are just trying to assemble basically a nursing home squad of players that have some form of a potential of something left in the tank to do one last ride. I think he'd be a good fit for the second unit. I mean, they have Kendrick Nunn, and they obviously have Russell Westbrook and a litany of other guards. But, you know what I'm saying? Oh, Alex Caruso. That's what I was fucking thinking of. Oh, my God. Alex Caruso is like a 4.5 point per game, like, average scorer. Like, he's on a roster because he's got athleticism and he can play good defense. But, like, scoring-wise, like, he basically got $10 million a year to go to Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Like, you look at
the market
that
into consideration, though. Yeah, you gotta see how the market plays a big factor as far as what players are gonna get paid, regardless of whether they're.
I don't think Isaiah cares about the money though. He just want to be on a roster.
Yeah.
Like, I know he's not looking for no big deal. He knows that window's gone. Like, he's accepted that, and he said that on a multitude of podcasts. He was on the For the Smoke podcast or whatever, Free Smoke, whatever the hell Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson's podcast is. And he goes, I know that. That time in my life has passed, but, I just want to I want to ball. I want to hoop. He can hoop. whether it's 10 points, 15 points, whatever. You can't tell me there are 50 players on all NBA rosters between roster spot 1 and 15. He don't deserve to be on one of them. There's no way.
He just has to stay healthy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say this. You know, it would be an interesting team for him to possibly end up on if they end up getting to that possibility. What about a reunion with Boston?
I was thinking the same thing. They don't
not
really have a second unit in terms of a guard. They just got Dennis, but he'll probably start at the 1.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that I see it is maybe they could get him for like a vet minimum contract where, look, they need to fill out a roster spot. He could definitely be somebody that they look at. I mean, the guy did drop 81 points in a pro game. I can't just discount that. However, it does come with, it's kind of like
some baggage. Yeah.
Not just baggage. I mean, the injury thing is a major issue with him.
You got to pass the physical. NBA contracts don't pan out if you don't pass it. Even if you sign on the dotted line, you have to pass it.
I know, but just because you pass a physical doesn't mean that you're gonna walk through the season and you're gonna be completely fine.
But that's why NBA rosters have contract stipulations. If you play a certain percentage of the game, you get this amount. If you miss a certain amount of time, you don't get this amount.
But you're not understanding what I'm saying is. What I'm saying is that why would it be worth a team to invest in a guy like that who can't stay healthy, but they can invest in somebody who's younger, who is going to more than likely be able to play both sides of the ball a little bit more effectively and can stay on the court longer? It's not really an issue.
Because you don't know what a question mark puts out. You know Isaiah's weakness. You know his pros. If you know his ceiling is going to be 15 points off the bench, and you don't know what this other guy's ceiling is,
I think you're putting. I think you're putting a little bit too much faith into Isaiah's game.
I'm not saying he's dropping it consistently, but if you're in an NBA setting, right, and your star point guard or your star 2 guard is in foul trouble or he's hurt, if Isaiah Thomas gets the minutes, I'm not saying it's going to be an efficient 15. I'm not saying he's going to shoot fucking 7 for 9 from the field. But the point I'm trying to make is if he gets the opportunity and the shots and, he gets the looks and he gets into a rhythm and he gets consistent minutes, you know what I'm saying? And he has a good team around him. Who the fuck is to say Isaiah cannot drop 15 points? There's no reason why he can't. 15 is not a lot of points in the NBA, Kyle. The man was averaging almost 30, for God's sakes.
And that was 5 years ago. A lot of things could happen in 5 years.
Bro, I'm cutting it in half. Literally in half. You don't think Isaiah Thomas can literally hit 3 threes in a game and have 9 and get to the free throw line 5 times and hit a layup or a mid-range jump shot?
I keep reiterating this point is whether or not he can stay healthy. And that
I said outside of that. I already took that off. I said if he can, do you think he could put that up?
I said 10. I think he'd get 10.
Again, I didn't take it. I didn't say consistently. I'm just saying.
It's just at this point, I think when it comes to front offices, why would you invest in a guy that is probably 50-50 to stay on the court? Not even a full year. I'm talking about half the year. And, you compared, you brought up Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso, by and large, has been relatively healthy throughout the small window that he's had his career so far. Is he the best scorer? No. But he's a better defensive player than Isaiah Thomas is. I mean, it's not really saying much, but, it's just at this point is sometimes availability is the best ability to a certain extent, because if you're on the court, if you're at least serviceable because you're not out due to injury, that's something. When it comes to Isaiah Thomas, that's a huge issue. And I don't think he's ever been right since that hip issue. So, for NBA GMs, is it really worth it to invest in a guy where you maybe get 20 games from him?
And that's the best part about these NBA contracts. You literally have the power to dictate payouts and how you get that, whether that's the back end of the contract is incentives, the guaranteed money is passing the physical and playing the first few games of the season, playing a certain amount of games. They're flexible. Don't be fooled because you see these big contracts like Kawhi Leonard and it's like, he gets $176 million over the next 4 years with a player option in the fourth. Like, no, there's stipulations of how he gets that. You know, if he gets all pro, if he makes it to the All-Star game, if he gets an MVP, there's ways to get a maximized value of that contract. If you give him a vet minimum and you go and you break that down to getting paid out by making it certain portions of the year, Isaiah's taken that contract 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, but
the point I'm trying to make is he is better than a lot of players 14th, 15th, 13th, 12th man on the bench. They don't see the court anyway.
That's true, Kevin, but I just don't think that teams overall want to take a gamble on that, because I think they're looking at his previous record, whether it was the last 3 years of the league, his injury history, or they simply just want to give their other players a look just to see how they're going to end up doing. So I don't think it's the fact that Isaiah Thomas can't play. I think he can play. I think just based on his track record, teams just simply don't want to take that gamble. They're just like, we rather go elsewhere and do other things rather than signing you to a contract that you may not even play up to.
I agree.
That's the point that I've been making, is whether or not that he's worth the investment because of really the baggage that he's really accumulated over the last couple of years. I'm not denying the fact that he could score. I'm not denying that. It's just, you're talking about giving a guy a contract who, by and large, can't stay healthy and is essentially a nobody defensively. I know you mentioned that, like 40-50% of the league can't play. But at least out of that 40-50%, 90% of those guys are going to be able to be available for their own teams. With Isaiah Thomas, that's not really the case. So if you're a GM, why am I going to invest in a bench player who's not going to be ready to go because he's dealing with some sort of injury, or is still not right from an injury that he's had for 3-4 years? And that to me is, you're looking at it from, oh, this guy can play. And I get that. My point is that, is the investment worth it? And for GMs
send him to G League.
You could try him out there. You could put him on a 2-way contract. I mean, 2-way contract wouldn't be the worst thing.
This is the point you guys are failing to understand.
But
like, if it doesn't pan out, you can cut him, and you don't have to pay out the salary.
The thing is, do teams want to take that gamble, though?
That's the point.
If you need that next step, if you need that bench player that's going to give you points, I say you take. Bro, do you realize how many teams in the NBA towards the latter half of the year are like, I'm not too certain about this third unit, or somebody's hurt on this roster and I need somebody to fill in 15 to 20 minutes of a game. That's it. I'm not asking you to start. I'm not asking you to average 4 steals, 2 blocks, and a 20-plus minus rating. Your job is literally to put the fucking ball in the hoop. I'm not saying he's going to play the whole game or the whole series or the whole year. I think that gamble with the right contract is better than some of these players that sit on these NBA benches that literally never touch the court.
And you have a point, but the thing is, I just don't think these teams want to take that gamble. They don't want to do it.
So who is Miami's backup point guard right now?
Okay, so they just got rid of Goran Dragic. I don't think they have a backup point guard right now. But I don't. I get where you're coming from, but I think the way that Kyle and I are seeing it is from a team perspective.
I hear that. Yeah, I feel that.
I just don't think they want to take that gamble. One, because they may not. They don't think it may pan out. They just want to look at other things. They probably just don't feel like doing it. So it's gonna.
All I'm saying is he deserves a nod. A look. I don't think he should be blacklisted. You know what I'm saying? Like, he should be getting some offers, whether it be on a shit team like Detroit or something like that. But I know he doesn't want to play for a garbage team because he wants to contend for a ring in his late 30s or in his upper 30s, whatever he is in terms of age. But I bring up a point. The Mavs just signed Sterling Brown from the Houston Rockets. He's been in the league 3-4 years. His career average is like 8.5 points per game. What? Who? Like, what? They signed him because he's a career 40% three-point shooter, and he shoots like 89 to 92% from the free throw line. Whoop-de-fucking-do. He played on the worst team in the NBA, so no shit he was going to get burned. You know what I'm saying? Like, these players that are getting these contracts for hopes of high ceilings, You don't know if that guy's going to get hurt. I get it. Isaiah Thomas's injury history is absolutely dog shit. His numbers have been absolute garbage. The teams he's been on, he should have been able to contribute more than he did, but the health and the inconsistencies with minutes have kept him from playing at that level. All I'm saying is you pass the physical and you drill it in his head. Yo, dude, we're signing you for the sheer point of I need you to score. And if you get hurt, you're done. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't hurt you if you know for a fact financially you can escape from it with no harm. Because it's not a wasted roster spot because you need someone to fill it regardless.
Yeah, but the thing is, do they want to take that gamble, though? It's what it ultimately comes down to. Do they want to do it? And I just don't simply think they do, which sucks for him because, yes, he deserves to be in the league. Yes, I think he can do better than some other players that are, that are absolutely nobodies. But I just think the teams don't want to do it, whether that makes him a pariah, whether that makes him a blacklister. I mean, it's just it is what it is right now until a team actually decides to sign him.
So later in the year, if Miami comes out of left field and signs him, who leads your second unit? Who can really score on the next 5 players of your starting rotation?
Tyler Hero.
Right.
I think that he would rather put their eggs in the basket with Tyler Hero than Isaiah Thomas.
Well, he's under contract already. I'm just saying, but like in terms of being a backup point guard, because we all know Isaiah Thomas can facilitate as well. I'm not saying he's a professional in terms of the best. He's a body that has experience, that can score, and demands, oh shit, when Isaiah comes in this lane, he's a good finisher at the rim, even at his size. And he shoots almost 90% from the free throw line. Kyle, the Lakers are interested, so I don't even want to hear it because if he ends up on LA, I don't want to hear it.
I've seen Boston, and he's addressed the Boston rumors of him possibly going back there. But here's the thing, Kevin, you keep saying that he can score. Like, yeah, like he could score, but like, I don't know if he's capable of what you think that he can do. I didn't say. I said it again. I didn't say. I said he could give you 15 if needed.
I just if he had to.
I don't see it anymore. I don't deny the fact that he could maybe get you some buckets, but I mean, homeboy's averaging single-digit point per game averages. The last
and like you said,
DMs take a look at too. They take a look at his past production,
and I hate to bring this up, I really do. Homeboy's 5'9". He is 5'9".
He's my height.
I mean, my height. You know, you talk about somebody like Tyler Hero. So you guys brought the name up. At least
6'3", 6'4".
But Tyler Hero is, a typical NBA height for a player, and he's relatively young. So there's more of a long-term investment with Tyler Hero than somebody like Isaiah Thomas, who's been in the league for a decade already. And at this point, he's been so injury-riddled the last couple of seasons, he's not really worth it to make a move for him. So, I mean, I don't deny the possibility that he could get signed to a team. It's just, how serviceable is he going to actually be? Because, Kev, there could be a real good chance that he gets signed to the roster, but he could be a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a very good chance. And even if that is the case, it's like you said, it's just a body at that point. You get a body.
Is it really worth it?
You get a body from anywhere. It's like you said, Jared Dudley's on the roster. It's just, I don't know. I don't know with Isaiah. I don't deny the fact that he can score, but
I think it's possible. That's all I'm saying. I think he deserves another shot.
But we got to talk about somebody who can play, but didn't necessarily get the contract that they were expecting this offseason. And that would be Dennis Schroder. Now, Dennis Schroder is coming off of an infamous playoff series with the Lakers where there were a couple games where, if memory serves me right, he scored no points. Or, if that, he scored single-digit point performances. He was expecting somewhere in the range of $100 to $150 million contract extension this offseason, and he ended up settling for a 1-year, $5.9 million deal with the Boston Celtics. Anthony, I'll start with you. How do you fumble the bag like that?
I think it was one of the worst fumbles I've ever seen. I mean, it was absolutely horrible what transpired. I mean, the homeboy had a 4-year, $84 million extension with the Lakers. Could have easily taken that, but instead he decided to let his ego get to him because I feel like he thinks he is a top point guard that deserves top money. And obviously his play, what he did in the season didn't correlate to that. So pretty much, I guess you can say karma's a bitch, and karma ended up getting to him because he had to end up signing this 1-year deal with Boston, kind of as like a prove it deal. But to be honest, I really, unless he completely takes off with Boston, I really don't see him getting another big contract anywhere because I feel like the Lakers gave him that chance to do it, and he just decided, okay, I think I'm better than that. You know, my ego supersides that. So it sucks for him because I mean, you could have been making 16 million a year, you know, at least have some stability, and now you got to prove to the NBA that you're worth it. Which, I mean, I think he's just one of the guys. I really don't think he's a star or one who could really make a lot of difference. I think he's just ends up one of the guys. So honestly, I'm not surprised that he turned that extension down just because of how big his ego is, but it kind of sucks for him though, because you could have been making all that money and now you're stuck in a situation where you got to prove yourself.
Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, I got no remorse, honestly. You did it to yourself. You try to bet on yourself, and I can respect that to a certain extent. But when you get a big lump sum like $84 million put on your fucking lap, and you literally sit here and you say I'm worth 30 million more easily, I think you're crazy. You have LeBron James, you have Anthony Davis, and obviously you know that they are looking to acquire more players. So you would be a focal piece in a championship contending team and getting a big bag on top of that. Instead, you go to a middle of the pack, if not bottom tier Eastern Conference team based off of injuries and the roster that was constructed in Boston with a rookie head coach. And you have to, like Ant said, basically it's another prove it year for you. I don't think Dennis Schroder is good enough to sit here and come out and earn the contract that he thought he was worth. But the point of the matter is, when you have players like that are so egotistical and it goes beyond confidence in yourself, it becomes arrogance. Bro, oh well, like I don't fucking care. Like people are like, oh, Dennis Schroder had this opportunity, or it could have gone this way for Dennis, or maybe Dennis really thought that the Lakers are going to offer him more. Bro, it ain't no loyalty to you, man. It's a business, and you not worth that much money, fam. That's just how it is, and I don't see anything past that. He's an idiot. It is what it is, and now if he's got to go out there and drop a mediocre 15 points a game for Boston to give him a 2-year extension, whoop-de-doo. You're still not going to make enough as you would have made in LA to compete for a chip, let alone win a chip. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's crazy.
Well, there's an article on Yahoo Sports that I pulled up, and it really kind of goes to show, I think, how far in like Dennis was in thinking that he was going to get this massive contract. The article says, I think he's in a state of shock because of what he's done. And he was speaking about Schroder turning down that 4-year, $84 million extension with the Lakers, thinking that he was going to get a huge contract from some team that was in need of a point guard. And the fact of the matter is, he was expecting that from the New York Knicks, but the New York Knicks really didn't budge that much.
No shot.
And I just think that he went into this offseason with the mindset that he was going to get paid upwards of $100 million. And I just think whoever was feeding him that information, or whether he believed it or not, bro, like, you were literally abysmal in the playoffs for the Lakers. Like, abysmal. You think that
you're one good game.
Like, I don't want to hear it. And the fact of the matter is that you're playing with LeBron James and the Lakers, who were title favorites this year before all the injuries took place. And you had a chance to step up and kind of show what you were worth. And he fell short. I mean, fell short and is actually playing it nice. Bro, like, he literally fell on his face. Like, if we're going to be 100% honest with this. And to come around here and say that, oh, yeah, I deserve a $100 million contract after my team just got bounced out of the first round where I literally was scoring single-digit point performances against the Phoenix Suns. Like, I don't want to hear it. Like, the way that I assess the situation with him is this is a 1-year deal for him to kind of re-maximize his value, because at this point, he's going to be a backup to Marcus Smart.
I think a start. We don't know how long Jaylen Brown's injury is going to last.
I'm just reading the article here, and they were saying that he's interested in 1 year and then getting back out there. They were saying that the Celtics have pitched Schroder the idea of backing up Marcus Smart next season. That was what this quote from this article that I'm reading says. So
great. Good for him, honestly.
But it's like, yeah. You're on a roster with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are by far and away the 1 and 2 options on this team. I don't know where Dennis kind of really fits in that mold. Dennis could be at best maybe like the 4th option on the team. But the way that he's been playing the last couple months and the way that it ended with the Lakers, it's not ideal.
Nope.
I don't really see it working out for him long term. I don't. I think at best, if he shoots like 45% from the field this year, good on him. He may get like a 2 or 3 year deal after this, maybe worth like $50 million, but I think that's it. This idea of him getting a $100 million contract is absolutely ludicrous, and I don't think it's ever going to happen unless he puts up like an MVP performance this year, which there is no way in hell that is happening.
No, not in Boston. But I mean, that about wraps it up. I know I got the notification my AirPods are dying as well as my phone. And I believe you're in the same area in which I am, so I definitely don't want to ruin the audio of said episode, but I wanted to thank you for coming on. Of course, taking the time to deal with our stupidity, guys. It is almost 12:30. We have legitimately been on this phone call for 4 hours, so it is very interesting when Kyle and I get a guest, because we tend to just sway off the conversation so quickly, and before you know it was 10:30. So again, Ant, thank you for being on. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the loyalty and the support. Everything that you do, it's people like you is the reason why me and Kyle keep doing it, man. So we really love you. We really appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. One of my favorite things to do, not only to speak sports, but speak sports with colleagues who enjoy speaking about it as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'll definitely keep listening on, and hopefully I'll be back for another discussion.
Oh yeah, I mean, and just like Kevin said, I don't think Kevin could have said it any better. Just appreciate you having you on. Just it's been a while since Kevin and I have had a guest on the podcast, and man, you were just an absolute joy to have on the podcast. So, from me, just thank you for being on the podcast, man. I definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
But
yes, sir.
With that said, you guys, thank you guys for tuning in, whether you were listening to it on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you were watching it on YouTube. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning in and supporting the channel in any way, shape, or form. That's pretty much all I have to say. We'll see you guys later next week when we drop another episode of the Neighborhood Podcast. And until then, take it easy, you guys.